get into now how to approach content strategy. So the first step, and one that we always talk about is often overlooked by many organizations, is defining your organizational goals. So before you even start writing content, trying to get things published on your website, take a step back and really determine and define very specifically what your goals are as an organization. So are you looking to increase donations or attract new donors, recruit volunteers, increase awareness about your program or your cause, or just be an authority on your cause, or maybe it's a combination of several of these. But sort of back to my earlier point, you want to make sure that your business goals are aligned with your content strategy so that any efforts that you're making from an online perspective are really helping to support those things, because that's really the purpose of what content is there to do. And so the way that you can do that in part is by defining your audiences and what resonates with them. So you've established what your goals are, use those to define who your target audiences are. And again, you can have one, you can have multiple, there may be sub audiences within those, but you want to make sure that you're creating and positioning your content to engage these audiences. And that's just simply because different things will resonate with different groups, and you'll want to have content positioned in different forms or different methods to best resonate with those target audiences. So just a couple of examples here of some groups that may be pertinent for your organizations. So for instance, from a volunteer perspective, if you're looking at targeting these individuals, people that are interested in volunteering want to feel like they have a sense of purpose. And so making sure that the content that you're publishing is conveying that and making people feel like, yes, I want to volunteer with this organization because I will feel like I have this amazing sense of purpose. And some of the things that you can do to do that are testimonials and reviews. So having people that have actually volunteered share their experiences. That could also be by way of video content, any sort of video to show experiences of people that are actually out volunteering and kind of showing a day in the life or what they experience doing so, and then different statistics as well. So those are just some examples, and you can see here an example from American Red Cross. They do a great job of kind of incorporating all of these different content methods. So you can see they have a video library here, and it really showcases some of their volunteers and the different experiences that they've had. It just helps to bring that message off the page and make it real for people, as well as these by the numbers statistics that they have that show the number of people that are volunteering. So again, kind of showing people, hey, if you volunteer with us, you can be part of this really bigger mission that's bigger than yourself and be part of these tremendous numbers. So those are just some instances of how you could potentially target a volunteer audience. If you are looking at targeting donors, this would be some similar types of content, but a little bit different positioning, of course. So people that are looking to be a donor or donate to a certain organization, they want to give to a cause that has a clear need and impact. So it's really important here that you're using your content to very explicitly express your why and emphasize what your social impact is. And so similarly to the volunteers examples that I provided, statistics and research are a great way to do that. You could show results towards a goal that you have as a business, money raised, things like that. Success stories again, so showing testimonials from real people that maybe benefited from the donations and showcase what that impact is. And so these are just a couple of examples from the Salvation Army. You can see here they have some different case studies and stories to share, how they're pacing towards their goal and what the impact is, and how anyone that's donating to this cause can be part of these broader items. And then with beneficiaries, so this is really focusing on how your programs actually help them. So what can they expect? Why should they choose you? Making sure that that information is clearly portrayed on the website. So this is really around describing the programs that are offered and how people are able to access your services. And so you can see here this example for Dress for Success. They have an individual landing page for their suiting program and how people can actually take part in that and take advantage of some of the services that they offer. So that's a little bit on how to approach your content strategy. But now, how do you actually go about making sure that people find this content? And this is where you're going to want to take an SEO-centric approach. So the SEO piece is what's going to make sure that all this great content that you're assembling is actually found out on the web. So the first step is to find out what people are actually searching for. One of the ways that you can do this is based on your existing content. And so this is a great free way that you can actually take a look under the hood of your website and see exactly what is resonating with people already. So you can collect data from Google Search Console as well as Google Analytics. And this will really show you different areas that you're actually performing well for, and then maybe areas that potentially need some more work or development. And the way that you do that is what we recommend to do is go into Search Console and actually take a look at keyword and page performance over the course of at least the last year, just so you have a really good set of data to work with. And you're able to export this information out. You can see a sample here that I pulled from a current client. You can see information like clicks, so how many people are actually going through to the page, impressions. Impressions is a great gauge of visibility. That's another word that I like to use for impressions because it's telling you how many times that page actually came up in a search result. You can see click-through rate and your average position over the course of the time that you've input. And just some general parameters around this and how you could use this information. So for example, something that has high impressions or high visibility, as well as a good rank. Good, I would consider anything from positions 1 through 10. Low CTR is sort of relative to your individual website, but a general good starting point is less than 3%. So if you have a combination of those factors, that may be a situation where you're sort of, okay, I'm getting good visibility, I have a good rank, but for some reason people aren't really clicking through. Well, that could be a consequence of maybe a poorly optimized title and meta description, or not even poorly optimized, but just not what people are specifically looking for. So that's something that you could go in and just refresh optimization on that, which is a fairly simple task to do. Another way to look at this data is looking at what has high impressions. So again, high visibility, but maybe is ranking lower. So probably anything beyond position 20, beyond page 2, and a low click-through rate. Those situations would probably require a little bit more development from your end, just to actually go in and perhaps start by adding content to that page and then potentially creating some additional content to support those topics. And one of the great things at 2 October's, Search Console is a wonderful tool, but you are limited in the amount of data that you can access. You can get about 1,000 queries from there. 2 October's has actually come up with a wonderful proprietary tool that lets you have access to hundreds of thousands of pieces of data and queries in Search Console, and it sort of does all of this manual work for you. My colleague Noah Lerner actually did a workshop on this recently, so I have a link to it here if you're interested in learning more about that. You can review that once Nico sends out the slides following this workshop. Additionally, we have Google Analytics as another great tool that you can use. So if you access page reporting here, you can identify areas of the site that have or that are getting more traffic or getting less traffic, right? So those that are getting more traffic, of course, are performing better and are probably resonating with more audiences versus less traffic. Maybe those aren't topics that are as strong for the site. So you can sort of use these and supplement the Search Console information and just see if there's any additional insights that you can garner there. And I have included the path here of how to actually get to this information. So you could see here just some tidbits that I called out. So again, high amounts of traffic. These could potentially be some popular topics that you may want to build upon. So those are usually good low-hanging fruit because you're already performing well for those. So you can sort of piggyback off the traction that you've already gotten. The things that potentially have something like a higher bounce rate, like some of these pages, maybe there's some more compelling content that's needed. Now, sometimes higher bounce rates are okay. It just depends on the purpose of the page. People may find the information that they need and leave, but generally you want to have people be more engaged. So taking a look if there's anything else that you can do to create some more compelling content around those topics. So once you've explored your existing content and looked at some ideas from that standpoint, the next step is to conduct keyword research. Excuse me. So you can identify high volume keywords here by conducting keyword research. There's a variety of tools out there that you can use. These are some screenshots from a tool called SEMrush that I think is wonderful for keyword research and content ideation. You can really find out what people are searching for by just entering a broad topic, and these tools will identify all of the related queries that people are looking for. So it just helps you to quantify them. So you can see here some examples around disaster relief. So if people are searching for that, there's 22,000 searches per month. There may be some more long-tailed keywords, for example, disaster relief volunteer organizations, 1900. So what you want to try to do is use a combination of higher volume and lower volume keywords, because the higher volume ones, of course, will be more competitive and the lower volume keywords not as much. But this just gives you a good sense of, as you're going and optimizing your content later on, some of the things that you can incorporate. And it also provides a good starting point to get some ideas for topics as well. Another really important piece is researching FAQs. So frequently asked questions, these are super important from a search standpoint. It's something that Google is really looking towards now to really help make sure that the content that you are producing is aligned with what questions that people have and is really matching their intent. And so here again, there's a variety of tools that you can use. SEMrush is another one within that same keyword research tool. You can take a look at what different questions are populating. There is also I believe it's still free, at least for a certain number of uses. It's called answerthepublic.com. You can also enter a topic in there and it will generate some frequently asked questions there to give you a sense of things that people are asking. And quite honestly, one of my favorite ways to research is just actually going into the search, going into a Google browser and typing in whatever topic that you're looking at and checking out the people also asked. So for this example, looking at adopt a dog, these are some of the questions that people have around that. So you can see there's some local intent around there. There's some different types of questions. So this really helps to refine some of the topic ideas that you have. And potentially as you're looking at revamping or enhancing some of your existing content, these may be questions that you want to incorporate on some of those pages just to make sure that you're really tapping into what people are looking for. Another item is looking at search trends. So here again, you can use a tool like SEMrush topic research. This is really great too, because you can enter in something like in this example, wildlife conservation, and you can see topics that are trending, what their associated search volume is, any recent headlines around those topics, various questions around those topics. So this is a great research tool to help you kind of get a starting point as well in terms of, not only what keywords tend to be popular over time, but what things are popular right now and what things could you potentially capitalize on. Google Search Trends or Google Trends is another great tool. This is a free resource that actually lets you see current and historical demand by topic. And the great thing about this is you can change the filters to modify the time frame that you're looking at. So you can see it here. I just tend to like to look over the last 12 months because I think that is the best way that you can really see seasonality and things of that nature. But this is also wonderful because you can see by regional interests as well. So if you're really trying to tap into local audiences or target different demographics, you can see where the top regions are that are looking for this particular query. And it also will provide you some related topics and related queries here. So you can see based off of the sort of broader topic that I put in of wildlife conservation, it will show top topics and top related queries as well. So these can provide some additional ideas for content also. So once you've done all of this research and looked at how people are actually searching, the next step is to actually see who is doing this well, who is actually capitalizing on, how people are actually out there searching. So you can use SEO tools to do this and find out who has the most visibility for the keywords and the topics that you've identified. So again, SEMrush is a great tool to do this. Ahrefs is another tool that's also wonderful to do this. This allows you to really quickly identify your top competitors without doing a lot of manual research. So this is just one competitive snapshot that I pulled for womengivingback.org. It shows who their main organic competitors are. It's basically looking at where is the most overlap for keywords, depending on where everybody's ranking. And so it just really gives you a good starting point to say, okay, well, I know rosehaven.org or some of these other websites are also ranking really well for similar topics. So let me go take a look at those websites and those pages and see exactly what things that they're doing and what tactics they seem to be employing. Another way is just reviewing the search results. Again, I know it seems really obvious, but it's a really great effective way to see who's actually doing this well. And that's actually just typing in a query into Google. So you can conduct searches for any of the topics that you're potentially looking at exploring and just see what these search results look like. You'll get a sense of the types of content that's ranking, if it's specific businesses or if it's more blog style content, if it's list content, best of, things like that. You can see here in the example for Donate Children's Clothing, it actually has a featured snippet that populates as well as people also ask. So this is a great one to take a look at, specifically those pages, to see how they may potentially be capturing those search features and if there's any insights that you can garner from that. And just another example to show you the more extensive SERP result here for Donate Children's Clothing. You can see, just kind of scanning the titles here, how to, where to, list of items. I can see them there. So baby clothing. So just kind of scanning, I probably want to have some content on how to donate, location, content, baby clothing seems to show up a couple of times. So maybe I want a page on that and maybe top items needed for that. A wish list here shows up, so maybe some type of checklist for people to be able to refer to. So again, a really simple, easily accessible way for you to be able to see what's performing well. And once you've determined who's actually doing this well in ranking, actually diving in to figure out how they are doing this. So if you take a look at the top ranked pages, you want to look at, okay, what are they actually including and how are these pages structured? So if we're looking at this example for car donation, you can see the first result here is for Goodwill. This example here to the right is just a Google Chrome extension that allows you to quickly see what the page headers are, which are big contributors from an SEO perspective. So as I'm scanning through these headers, I can see they're incorporating the keyword car donation. They have things around process, vehicle types, benefits. So those are some things that I probably want to include. This other habitatnova.org, they are including an FAQ section, and you can see the way that they've marked it up and the specific questions that they've asked. So, there's a specific approach to actually marking up your headers. Typically, the subtopics on your page you want to have is at least an H2. Those play heavily into how you're ranking on search. And then you can see here they've actually marked up their questions as H3s just to follow that hierarchy. But this is a great way just to quickly see the structure of a page and exactly the types of things that they are incorporating.
Yasmin, what was that Chrome extension?
So this one is, I can't think of the name right now. It's, SEO in one click. Yep, that's the one that I use, and it is a free extension, so it's great. On the summary tab, you can actually see the title and meta information as well, which could be helpful if you're going through and actually doing some optimization refreshes on your page.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. So once you've taken a look at who's doing this content well, you've got a sense of the topics that you want to pursue. Now it's time to actually go in and build some topics or build some content. So the best way to do this is really to take those topics and start to organize them into what I like to call content hubs. And the reason that this is important is because it really helps to make sure that you're trying and going to build authority around broader topics, because like we discussed earlier, a lot of those broader topics and higher volume keywords are more competitive. So it doesn't always make sense, especially as a smaller organization or business. Not all of us can be Amazons of the world. So how do I actually go after that and be competitive? And the way you do that is by building content to support that broader topic and targeting some longer tailed keywords, some subtopics that are related, but not just so broad that, that it's going to be hyper competitive. And so being able to organize your topics around the goals that you've established, your programs, you could use niche areas, whatever your different areas of your organization that you want to focus on. Those can serve as your hubs, and then you can create content around those. This also just helps you to keep track of how many content pieces have been developed for each hub. And the reason that I think that's important is because sometimes one can become, it can become very lopsided, where you end up developing a lot of content for one hub and then maybe only 3 pages around another. So depending on what your priorities are, if you're really trying to target the specific programs that your company offers or your organization offers, then you want to make sure that each of those is represented equally so that you're building authority around all of those different hubs. So this is just sort of a visual of what that would look like. So again, using that hub page to really target your broader topics and higher volume keywords, really focusing in on that primary keyword. And then your subtopic pages are going to target that supporting content and longer tailed keywords that are going to really help bolster your authority for that primary topic that you're going after. And another important piece here that's often overlooked as well is making sure that you're incorporating internal links to each of those pages. So making sure that those subtopic pages link to, if you have sort of a page that's acting as your hub page or a primary page that you're going for, make sure that all of those are linked, as well as linking those subtopics to each other. So you can do that throughout the body copy, just looking for places where it makes sense. And you don't want to overdo it. Depending how long the copy is, I would just incorporate just a few links throughout, just that sound natural. And just think about, if you were the reader and you're going through this content, what types of links would be helpful for you, and then include them that way. But internal linking is a great way to help also to build up your authority around topics. So this is just one example from St. Jude Children's Hospital, how they've organized their content hubs by audience. So you can see here, basically their Get Involved is really targeting their donors, and they have that. So, donors that are coming to the site or maybe looking for this content, they can see where that is and they understand where to go. But then you see here, they have things like school fundraisers, sport and fitness fundraisers, etc., that are targeting more of the SEO keywords, and they have multiple landing pages to support that. Similarly, they have a section for volunteers, and this is also very nicely segmented around different types of giving and other ways to give, as well as beneficiaries. This section is great because this actually gets into specific treatments, and so they can target different keywords around people that maybe have these illnesses or parents that are looking for support around these illnesses. So it's a great setup and organization of the site that's really helping to ensure that they have coverage across all of these hubs. And a way that you could really manage this and just make it a little bit easier for you to keep track of is maintaining a content calendar. So this is just one example. You definitely don't have to follow this to a T, but generally what you want to include is the month. I like to include status. So is the content live already? Is it in progress, waiting on approval? Just so you have track of those types of things. I always note the content hub. So what's that broader topic that these individual topics are supporting? Of course, outlining your subtopics for each hub, what the name and the title of the content is, adding the URL there, just because as you start to get more content too, it's nice to be able to quickly reference that, especially as you're going back and adding internal links and things like that. What type of content is it? So it may be a traditional web page or a core landing page on your site, but maybe it's more of a blog style content, and you'll kind of know what types of pages to pursue based off that competitive research that you did earlier. And then indicating just what your primary and secondary keywords are. At least primary, you generally want to pick 2 to 3 target keywords for that page. Secondary keywords are going to be any related keywords. There's not really a specific number you need to include there. It's just anything that's really supplementary. And the reason that's important is just to sort of keep track of the keywords that you're targeting per page, so that you make sure that you have varied coverage across the board and you don't have multiple pages targeting the same thing. that could be diluting your content. And then just any notes for your team or for yourself for each of these. And I'd like to maintain this in something like a Google Sheet so that you can share it with your writer, other people on your team, and everyone can easily make notes and updates in real time. And then what you want to do from there is for each of those pieces, actually give your writers direction. And so this would be in the form of a content brief. Again, this is just an example. You definitely don't have to follow this, but typically what you want to include here is what is going to be important from an SEO perspective. Writers are wonderful, but they're generally writing not with the intent of targeting SEO. So it's just important to give them that direction up front so that as they're writing the pieces, that they're layering these things in. So letting them know things like primary and secondary keywords, what the title and meta description should be, header tags, any internal links that you want to include. It's also really helpful to outline what the intended user intent is for the page. So based off the research that you did, how do you want this page to be positioned? What are people trying to get out of this page when they come here? And I always find it really helpful too to include examples of well-ranking content. So as they're writing the piece, they can go refer to these pages and actually see some live examples of content that's performing well. And that's usually really helpful for writers. So once you've completed all these steps and you've started publishing content and you're in a good spot, the next step is to actually track performance of that. Of course, you want to see how that is doing over time. And then adjust accordingly. So some of the things that you may be looking at would be things like, is your website getting more exposure? So are more people seeing your site? That would be something that you could track by a metric like impressions. So I mentioned earlier, impressions really looks at visibility or how many times that the page is showing up. So this is one way that you can answer that question by seeing that trend over time. Is the content getting people's attention? So that would be things like click-through rate or traffic trends. Are people finding the content interesting? What does your bounce rate look like over time? Pages per session. So are people going to more pages? Are you seeing that number increase? And are the engagement metrics actually increasing from there? Again, these metrics should be tracked over time. So content is, a little bit different than some other digital marketing channels in that it takes time to build traction, right? So especially if you are starting from scratch, or let's say that you've established a new hub or a new topic that you want to start working towards, it's a minimum of, I would say, 3 to 6 months, and that's being ambitious to really start to see traction made for something like that. So that's why it's really important to benchmark where your site is at before you start kind of working through all these things, and then keep track of that on a monthly basis. Some things like page optimization or content refreshes, like we talked about earlier. If you go in and refresh your titles and metas, some of those things you may see more immediate impact on, but creating that new content generally takes longer to see results. So that's just some important context to have. And then as you're observing this performance, what you want to do is make updates and then continue to produce new content. And so one question I get a lot is, well, how often should I be updating my content? I went in, I saw, the rank's not really doing anything and it's been a few months. I would give it some time again. If it's been more than that 3 to 6 month threshold and you're just kind of seeing it stay flat, you may want to revisit, making some adjustments, but I would start small. Start by adjusting your title and meta description, maybe things like the headers on the page, not necessarily rewriting all of the content at once, because again, that just takes time to build traction. So just sort of fine tuning things based off the metrics that you're seeing. So for instance, some of the things we talked about earlier, if you're seeing that maybe the page is getting good visibility, but the click-through rate's pretty low, you can try making an adjustment to your title and meta description and see if that helps to improve some of those metrics. So just making some little adjustments. And then if, I would say if a year passes or something like that, or if you have some really old content on your site that's been live for a few years, it's not getting any traction at all, those are situations where I would say, okay, well, let's look at an overhaul and perhaps just refreshing that page completely and starting from scratch and see if we can get some better performance there. And so that's basically everything that I wanted to share from a content perspective. But before we go into Q&A and office hours, I did just want to give a shout out to my colleagues. We have a couple of other great workshops coming up. June 16th, Overcoming Bias in Digital Marketing. And then in July, we'll be Fueling Business Insights and Market Opportunity with Data-Driven Research. So some really good ones. And again, you can sign up on the website if you're interested. Otherwise, here's my contact information. Like Nico mentioned, we will go into office hours now, so I'm happy to answer any questions. But if anything comes up afterwards, or you think of something later on, you're more than welcome.